Hello, and thank you for watching this regional forecast for the Corn Belt. I'm Andrew Pritchard, meteorologist with Nutrien Ag Solutions. Well, as we talk about storylines across the Corn Belt over the next 5 to 7 days, we do have the current storm system sitting over the Midwest. We'll deposit a little more light accumulating snow across parts of the mid-Mississippi Valley into the Great Lakes, the heaviest of which falling across parts of Minnesota or parts of Wisconsin and Illinois. Now, no brutal cold to follow on the backside of this one. Normally, our storm systems swing through this time of year, bringing in a bunch of cold air from Canada. But we'll talk about why that is not going to be the case with this one. And of course, the big clue there is all the warm air sitting across the Canadian prairie right now. Clippers from the northern plains to the Great Lakes, that is going to be the name of the game as we head into next week. No major storm systems in the forecast over the next 5 days across the midsection of the country. Not because of the current jet stream favoring the very strong flow blasting parts of British Columbia and the Pacific Northwest. The very strong subtropical jet stream in the south, but that leaves us with a drier pattern here across the midsection of the U.S. Now, as we wake up on Friday morning, we do have winter weather advisories in place across parts of the Ozarks into Missouri, Iowa, western and northern Illinois, and then parts of southern Wisconsin with a dense fog advisory across parts of central Illinois. Also a dense fog advisory here across parts of North Dakota and South Dakota, and temperatures there are in the teens to around 20 degrees, so that is potentially a freezing fog across parts of the northern plains, so watch out for slick spots in that area. Across central Illinois, that dense fog, a very soupy fog with temperatures in the mid-30s, so not freezing across central Illinois at this time. But we do have to talk about the potential for some snow as this storm system continues to wrap up and slowly move across the region. You see the counterclockwise flow here, the very well-defined storm system. Now, part of the key here across some of these regions here, part of central Illinois, even though the storm system almost directly overhead, the surface low pressure moving through central Illinois, we're looking at the lower level water vapor imagery here across the lower 48 on Friday morning. And what I want to point out is the blue and the white shading, that is areas of very deep moisture wrapping around the storm system. That's the moisture feeding into the storm. But if you notice the orange shading coming in from the high plains, being entrained into this storm system, lifting up into parts of central Illinois, that's a lot of dry air being wrapped up into this storm system, which kind of is eating away at the precipitation shield across some of these areas. So again, the heavier precipitation, the rain, maybe a couple rumbles of thunder across the southeast here ahead of the storm system, snow wrapping around on the backside here. But as we talk about central Illinois today, a lot of dry air punching in here and kind of eroding that precipitation. So it's a gloomy day, light mist, light drizzle, but across parts of central Illinois, maybe getting a break from the more measurable precipitation until this storm system lifts off to the north and to the east, putting us on the backside there. Temperatures across the region, I mentioned the freezing fog as temps are in the upper teens to near 20 degrees across the Dakotas. You can kind of see it's a rather weak flow, rather weakly defined storm system. So again, we do have the warm air advection on the north side, the warmer and more humid air being fed in in advance of the storm system, and then the cooler air coming in on the backside. But no real brutal cold, not any extreme cold feeding into this. And then of course the weak flow in advance of this, not really drawing the temperatures into the 50s and 60s into the eastern Corn Belt like we saw with the last couple of storm systems, which again were associated with much stronger flow, a much more active jet stream across the central U.S. So the high-resolution NAM model, the precipitation-type forecast, watching this storm system wrap up and slowly move off to the north and to the east, taking the precipitation with it as we just head through the next 24 hours, taking us through the day on Friday. Again, across central Illinois, a gloomy day, but probably a break from the heavier precipitation as that moves off to the east across parts of Indiana and Ohio through the day today. On the backside, the snow falling across parts of Missouri, Iowa, and Wisconsin. Snow does kind of fill back in with a second wave here. We get the jet streak wraps around this closed upper level low and kicks off a second round of snow here on the backside, or kind of reinvigorates the snow overnight Friday night into Saturday morning. And that's what deposits some of the heavier snow here across parts of Wisconsin into northern Illinois. And when I say heavier, we're talking about maybe 3 to 5 inches of snow, something like that, before this kind of wraps up and begins to fade during the later hours on Saturday. This would be noon on Saturday, seeing the snow already breaking up, that punch of snow kind of making its way into parts of northern Indiana, parts of Ohio, as we get into the last half of the day on Saturday before really losing its muster and falling apart as this thing kind of just disintegrates as it moves off to the north and to the east. So total snow accumulation, remember the heaviest snow here across eastern Wisconsin getting into northern and northeastern Illinois. That's where we could be talking about 3 to 5 inches of snow, maybe a locally higher amount, but this is going to be a very heavy, compactable snow, a very heavy cement-like snow that just simply doesn't accumulate very well. And then elsewhere, across parts of Missouri, Iowa, talking about a trace to maybe an inch or two of snow. As we get into central Illinois, going to be a sharp cutoff here, parts of and along the Interstate 74 corridor, I would say Champaign to Bloomington to Peoria. That's where we're talking about maybe an inch or two of that very heavy, slushy snow as this storm system departs. Total liquid precipitation over the next several days, just getting this storm system out here. So taking it through Monday morning, again, the heavier precipitation making its way off to the east today. That's where we could see a half of an inch to an inch and a half across parts of Ohio. And then where the snow falls here on the backside, we're talking about a liquid equivalent of anywhere from a tenth to a half of an inch, with, of course, that heavier snow, the heavier precipitation here across northeastern Illinois and southeastern Wisconsin. Now, the temperature forecast, we're just going to loop this out for the next 7 to 10 days. And again, warmer temperatures across the Canadian prairie, it's just not there at the disposal to be drawn into the Corn Belt. Where is the cold air? Eric Snodgrass covered this really in depth with the ag forecast yesterday morning, and then the long range forecast that we posted on Wednesday. But you can find cold pockets of air here over Alaska. You can find cold pockets of air here over Greenland. But again, not really available to be deposited here across the Canadian prairie. And even as we deal with, some troughing moving into the region, it's kind of disconnected from that bitterly cold air. And so not available for long-lasting, high-intensity cold air outbreaks across the Corn Belt. We'll play the upper level jet stream flow here, and again, I just want you to notice the very strong flow coming in from the Pacific, blasting the Pacific Northwest, parts of British Columbia with very heavy precipitation. The very strong subtropical jet stream off to the south, but again, this a pattern that leads to dry, quiet conditions here across the Corn Belt. So as we just look at the next 7 days of precipitation, or I should say it's the days 3 through 10 time frame, getting us beyond the storm system that's depositing the precipitation and snow across this region. I didn't want to contaminate the graphic with that. Showing you that we will see, again, heavy precipitation blasting British Columbia and the Pacific Northwest, with clipper systems making their way over the top here, having most of their moisture wrung out by the Rocky Mountains before dipping down into the northern plains and the Great Lakes. We had been talking about a midweek storm system around Tuesday to Wednesday, but I want to show you, this is the current forecast from the European model that was generated last night. We see a little light snow here across parts of the Midwest here, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, Illinois, with some light rain here across parts of Missouri. Hardly anything to look at. But if you jump back, let's look at the forecast that was created 2 days ago. You see a well-defined area of low pressure here across eastern Oklahoma, with precipitation wrapping up around it, another round of potentially heavy snow here across the northern plains. Let's look at the next run that came out. It's still there, maybe a little bit weaker. Jump to the next run. Okay, now what's going on? And then now we're looking at the most recent run. And again, that's just because this pattern, it doesn't favor big areas of low pressure developing here in the midsection of the country, with strong warm air advection, strong moisture advection out of the Gulf Coast, strong cold air coming in on the backside, which leading to significant snow. That's not what we have. Instead, we've got this pattern with very strong jet stream winds blasting in from the Pacific Northwest, clipper systems making their way down here from the Canadian prairie into the northern plains and the Great Lakes, trying to bring some of that Pacific Northwest or Pacific moisture with it, but having much of that wrung out here by the Rocky Mountains, and then again not being able to tap into the Gulf of Mexico for that significant moisture advection. So we'll take the drawings off, and I'm going to play the precipitable water loop here. And again, you're going to see systems coming up over the top here, but again, moisture tries to be drawn northward, and it's just cut off down across the Gulf Coast. And so we get some Pacific moisture. We're not seeing the real deep Gulf moisture being drawn northward. So again, we'll just play the loop of the precipitation forecast here from the European model. Again, starting with the storm system over the region that makes its way out here Friday into Saturday, Sunday. Another little wave comes through here. This is a first round on the backside here, another clipper-like system, maybe a little light snow across central and southern Illinois as we get into Sunday evening. That makes its way off across the mid-south as we get into Sunday night. Then we look at the forecast here getting into Monday night into Tuesday, another little wave. This is what was that significant storm system, or not significant, but more well-defined, slow-moving cutoff low that kind of resembled what we're seeing right now. A much weaker version of that being advertised right now, with maybe some light snow across parts of the mid-Mississippi Valley into the Great Lakes here Tuesday into the day on Wednesday. We look at Thursday, then another clipper system making its way in here Thursday and Friday, with again chance for some very light snow across the northern plains and the Great Lakes, with maybe some light mixed precipitation across the mid-Mississippi Valley. So as we look at the 24-hour snow accumulation forecast, so a rolling count of the 24-hour accumulated snow, of course, watching the first system make its way out through this region Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And we get into next week, maybe again some light snow sneaking in on the backside during the day on Sunday across parts of the Central Plains into Missouri and Illinois. Then we get into Tuesday and Wednesday. This is that storm system we had been watching. We're seeing it kind of fall apart as it gets closer. Again, maybe some very light snow flurries making their way across this region. Then we get into Thursday, Friday, talking about that next little clipper system again. Maybe some light snow across this region, the northern plains into the Great Lakes. Opportunities for precipitation, but not looking at well-defined storm systems, just kind of the every 2 to 3 day chance for maybe a light dusting of snow across this region from the Dakotas into Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin, and Illinois. Taking a look at your temperature forecast then for the next several days, again, no bitterly cold air coming in on the backside. I'm going to get it here so we can actually step through time. I know you're not able to grasp at what's happening at that speed. Your highs for the day here as we get into the end of the week, watching those temperatures, again, steady in the mid-30s across much of the Corn Belt, with overnight lows in the teens and the 20s.